At least on the bright side of doing these Thor reviews is that I get an excuse to use this $25 hammer in a couple more videos, so. Thor: The Dark World. Thor: The Dark World is a sequel to Thor, and it's the second movie of Phase 2 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Pretty much what it is that there was a time of peace. There used to be dark elves, and they wanted to pretty much fuck over the universe, and then, you know, Asgard came down and stopped them, and then it was peaceful for a little bit, and now the dark elves are pretty much on the horizon, and they want to try again and to envelop the universe in darkness, so now Thor's pretty much got to stop them. And spoilers, again, you know this by now. So yeah, Thor: The Dark World opens up and it's this really cool scene with Asgard and Dark Elves fighting. It pretty much made me realize that both Thor movies start out the same way, with Anthony Hopkins being like, once the universe was pretty chill and someone came along and kind of fucked with that a little bit and Asgard had to stop them. Now the universe is chill again until one day it won't. The opening to Thor, the Dark World, and after that opening scene, Asgard pretty much gets a hold of this thing called the Ether, and they're like, Dark Elves, no one can have this shit again, so we'll bury it deep underground where no one's gonna find it. And then title, Thor: The Dark World, and we cut to Asgard and Loki's on trial for what happened in the Avengers, which I like that scene. I like how Odin is kind of like really laying into him, just like, your birthright was to die, your birthright was not to be king, so now you're only alive because your mother loves you, so fuck off in the dungeon for the rest of your life. And then there's a really cool throwdown with Thor and his buddies on another planet, and that's cool to see Thor doing Thor things again. Then we go to Earth, and Natalie Portman's there, and she's kind of sulking about Thor still being gone. And this is actually one of the things that Natalie Portman's performance in this movie really is just kind of phoned in, which I get because her whole thing with that movie was Patty Jenkins was originally going to direct Thor: The Dark World, and then she walked away, and then Natalie Portman was like, Patty Jenkins was the only reason that I wanted to make this movie, and now because of my contract I pretty much have to stay here and make a movie that I don't want. So you can tell that she is bored for the entire time that she's making this movie, which in turn makes you kind of bored. And the complaints about the romance between her and Thor in the first Thor, I never got it. I thought it was a pretty good romance. I thought they worked pretty well together. In this movie, you could never buy the fact that these two are into each other at all. They just have no chemistry. Anyway, that aside, she accidentally stumbles upon the Ether, which awakens the Dark Elves again, and then the Dark Elves know where the Ether is, so they pretty much go after it. Thor goes after Jane, the Ether pretty much infected her, so now he's got to take her back to Asgard. These Dark Elves are heading towards Asgard, which then actually leads to a pretty exciting assault. Dark Elves show up to Asgard, and they start wrecking shop pretty much, and it's really cool action. It does lead to a pretty emotional scene where Malekith and his big baddie Dark Elf juggernaut guy, he stabs Thor's mom, Renee Russo, and it's like a scene like that. It's like, that's the potential in this movie. If more of the movie could have been like that scene, then this movie would have actually been pretty great. Anthony Hopkins walks in and he sees her dead, and he's pretty much stoic, but you can tell that it's something that he's really sad about. That's why Anthony Hopkins is such a good actor, because he can show you so much without really showing you anything. And then they have her funeral and she's floating down the river, and you see the hundreds of Asgardian bodies behind her, floating behind her, and you're like, yeah, they really did get fucked. A really emotional scene. And then it cuts to Loki in his prison cell, and one of the guards tells him that his mom's dead, so he pretty much just kind of takes him in it. Completely silent with the exception of the music. And then he just clenches his fist and he just destroys the whole cell. And it's just subtle moments like that really are the wasted potential of this movie, because this movie has great scenes in it. It's just, it's all kind of wasted. Like, touch on the fact that Malekith, I feel like could have been a really cool villain. As it turns out, you get an actor like Christopher Eccleston, and you somehow end up having one of the worst villains in the MCU. How does that happen? How does that happen? I don't buy his motivation. It really feels like he's doing this just because. There's no motivation behind it. There's no, this will make the world a better place. It's not because I'm an asshole. It's literally just a thing that needs to be done because I'm a bad guy in a superhero movie. That's my motivation. I'm a bad guy in a superhero movie. And it goes back to my review for Captain America: The First Avenger, where I said Red Skull's motivation is just that he's an asshole, and it works. Malekith's motivation of being an asshole doesn't really work. I said that in my review for First Avenger, that it doesn't always work. You have to do it right. You actually have to show us more more of the behind the scenes of the villain plotting, but you take that out. Instead, you give us dumb, forced jokes with Kat Dennings and Stellan Skarsgård, who are trying to make it seem like Loki really fucked him up when he was in his head, but for the most part, it's just played off for laughs. It's not something that you really feel the weight of what he did. You don't feel the weight of the fact that Eric Selvig pretty much opened up a wormhole and brought death and destruction onto New York. It's like, yeah, my mind got fucked with, and now I run around at Stonehenge naked. Anyway, let's get back on topic. So the assault happens on Asgard. Thor realizes that he has to go after Malekith, but Odin locks down Asgard. No one can get out of Asgard. He has to take Loki, and he's got to sneak out of Asgard through a secret path that Loki has. Leads to a pretty exciting chase in one of the Dark Elf ships. So they end up in the Dark World, Loki and Thor. I really like the back and forth that they have on Asgardian's skiff when they're sailing to Malekith. Loki and Thor having the banter. Like, it starts off with Jane, and he's like, it's a heartbeat, she's mortal, and you're just gonna keep living. Kind of reminded me of the Thing in Two Towers, when Elrond is pretty much telling Arwen that Aragorn's gonna die and you're gonna live forever. That's the burden you'll have to bear if you fall in love with a mortal. Like, they're gonna die and you're not. Loki does say, you're the son of Odin, and Thor says, no, not just of Odin. You think you're the only one that loved Mother? And he says, you had her tricks, I had her trust. Loki says, trust? Is that the look she had when you let her die? And Thor says, what help were you in yourself? And Loki says, who put me there? And Thor says, you know damn well who put you there. You did this. You did this. Everything that has happened, it is your fault. You need to take responsibility for yourself, dude. We wouldn't be even having this conversation if you didn't just... Everything that happens in Thor the Dark World can be linked to the fact that all of Loki's manipulating in Thor that led Thor to destroy the Bifrost. Loki trying to conquer the Earth, kind of plunging all these 9 realms into chaos. It paved the way for Malekith to come back. So Loki ends up dying, and it's kind of sad, and then Thor goes to Earth. Malekith's going to unleash the ether, he's going to envelop the universe in darkness, which leads to a pretty cool, like, portal combat fight where they're just going through portals and they're fighting each other. And then Thor pretty much takes out Malekith with Jane Foster's little interdimensional spike things, whatever the hell those are. And then the day is won. Thor goes back to Asgard and he's talking with Odin. He says, I don't really think I'm ready to be king. I need to figure some stuff out. And Odin's like, I can't give you my blessing, but know that if I were proud of the man my son had become, it would only come from the heart. So go, my son. And Thor's like, thank you. Odin shapeshifts into Loki and he's like, no, thank you. And then boom, credits. And the mid-credit scene is them dropping the ether off to the Collector, who says 1 down, 5 to go. So apparently the ether is an Infinity Stone. And what Infinity Stone? It's the Reality Stone, which... How? It doesn't really bend reality. It just kind of has this weird red goo. That's pretty much all it does. So that's weird. Not like Thor gets turned into blocks, his hammer turns into a thing of bubbles. It wasn't utilized in the same way that it was in Infinity War, so you don't even buy the fact that it's Reality Stone. You just feel like it's this weird, you know, kind of goo that destroys the universe. So, okay. That's Thor the Dark World. Guys, in the end, Thor the Dark World, I really do feel like it is a missed opportunity. I know not a lot of people are too big on the first Thor, but I really do love the first Thor. I feel like that paved the way for Thor the Dark World to be a good sequel. It just really is wasted potential. I think there's too much comedy. Sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't. Malekith is this huge wasted potential. Christopher Eccleston has gone on record of saying that he hates this movie. Natalie Portman doesn't like this movie. Anthony Hopkins was almost not going to come back for Thor Ragnarok. I really don't fault Alan Taylor for how this movie came out, because he's gone on record of saying, yeah, this movie was, I made the movie that I wanted to make while we were filming, but then we got to post-production and I was in the editing room and I was like, what the fuck is this? This is not the movie that I thought we were making here. So when everyone involved in the production isn't the biggest fan of Thor the Dark World, why should we, the audience, be the one to kind of be like, yeah, it's fine. There are moments that I like. There are elements that it does for Thor's character. Loki, I feel like his evolution is just this natural progression of how it would be for him. The only thing it really does for the wider MCU is it introduced us to the Reality Stone, which doesn't even do what the Reality Stone is supposed to do, so there is that. I think Thor the Dark World, not really as bad as Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 definitely has a lot more issues that I'm not a fan of, so I say Thor the Dark World is my second least favorite movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that means I will give Thor the Dark World the same rating that I gave to Iron Man 2, and say that Thor the Dark World is a guilty pleasure. It's funny that these are both sequels to otherwise better movies. So yeah, that's Thor the Dark World. That's my thoughts on it. And again, I'm really trying to play catch up, so my review for Captain America the Winter Soldier is right around the corner. But anyway guys, Thor the Dark World. What do you prefer? Thor 1, Thor the Dark World? Let me know. Sound off in the comments. And if you like what you've seen, you can click right here. And I will see you guys next time.